Okay, I'm here to do another episode in my series, The Player I'm Passionate About. And I'm joined by Drexxin here. And so I always like to let the guests tell me who they're going to talk about for this series. So who's the player you've picked?
I picked Misaya, who was the old mid laner for World Elites, and also the team captain from Season 2 up until his departure.
So whenever I start this series, I always like to just start with, like, what is the first point of contact that the person had with this player? Are you actually someone who was around back in, like, Season 1 and remembers when he first started? Were you around back then?
I've been around ever since the days where CLG won WCG 2010, so I've been around for a while. And yeah, it's only been about a year or so that I've been following the Chinese scene exclusively, but I have done a lot of backwards research on Misaya, and he comes out to me as someone that's really impressive on my plate. So,
when was the first time you actually, just chronologically, you heard about him, or you saw him in a tournament or something?
Well, the first time I heard about him was before Season 2 World Championships, and that's when I started learning a lot about him. And this was because that even though World Elite fell to CLG EU and the Season 2 World Championships, they had a period where they were so ridiculously strong, and so I felt I had to pay attention to them because they almost never lost the game the whole time. And a lot of it was because Misaya is the mastermind of the team, and he also was kind of played the role like Pu Mandu did for Piglet, and kind of like kept egos in check with like Wei Zhao and Cao Mei. So yeah, that's pretty much when I first started learning about the guy.
The first time Chinese LoL actually really had any significance in the West was when they surprised everyone and won the IEM that was in Guangzhou, I think you say it as. It was at the end of 2011. This was the period when, okay, CLG had won an IEM, Fnatic had won an IEM, and then CLG and other teams go to China, and everyone's expecting, okay, they're going to win the tournament because in theory the West is supposed to be on top. This era of World Elite was quite different. It didn't have the Cao Mei guy. It didn't have FZZF. It didn't have the guy who plays the support position. So that it was quite a different period. What was Misaya like in the early days? How would you describe him?
Well, Misaya wasn't quite as flashy, at the same time, League of Legends for China wasn't as developed at the time, so he didn't really hit the spotlight as much as his team. But even up until his departure, like, he's always been very strong, even when behind. But yeah, he started out with a team that wasn't really so hot. I mean, like you said, they didn't have a lot of key players, but yeah, when people didn't really expect their performance to be the way it did over in IEM Guangzhou, he kind of like persevered and still managed to, like, you know, find key players to enter the roles that were slacking and whatnot. And the team did really well together, along with their coach, whose name is eluding me right now.
Aaron, maybe?
Yes, Aaron, their coach. So him along with Aaron, it's kind of interesting because World Elite wasn't exactly a world threat in their formulation, but they managed to find the talent, and Misaya stuck with the team the whole time, even through their weak points. So
one of the champions we're obviously going to discuss, because it's his signature for this player, is going to be his Twisted Fate. And this is a champion which has been in League of Legends a long time. So when was it, do you think, that he rose up in terms of being known for his Twisted Fate? Was it always the case? Where would you put that chronologically, do you think?
I think it was a little bit before Season 2 Worlds, but I don't think he fully mastered the champs until their like total domination with IPL 5 and all that following afterwards. I mean, he is pretty much permaban status, and he only ever lost very few games with it at all, and only like one overall total match. And the thing that's really incredible about Twisted Fate is the level of depth he put into his preparation with the champion that may be a little more frequent now, but back in the day was pretty much unprecedented. Is like he had this kind of internal gold card timing that nobody really did before. And keep in mind, this is back when it was actually a little bit harder to time your gold cards and whatnot. And so this guy can basically count in his head like a 1-2-3 pattern before the gold card would appear, so that his ganks would always be way more effective than like pretty much any other Twisted Fate in the world, based on the fact that he could pretty much pull the gold card at whim because he had the mental process to pretty much determine when it was going to happen.
Okay, let's try and like specify that. And let's imagine someone's only seen the current rework of Twisted Fate now, and they see how it works now with picking the cards. What is different from what he was doing, and what would be the gap between him and the next best people playing Twisted Fate at the time?
Well, there were other decent mid laners at the time that could play Twisted Fate. Before Wei Zhao, the only huge Twisted Fate master was Big Fat GG, which was way far back when CLG was like super relevant in like preseason 1 or whatever. But yeah, In comparison to others, I don't think anybody really came close to mastering the champion just because he pretty much lived and breathed it and knew like the internal timings. But anyway, back in the day, you couldn't see, the cards appear. They're like right now you can see the 3 cards appear and you can like, kind of identify when it's going to happen. Before that, it was invisible. You couldn't actually tell what would appear next. And even before that, there was timing with the gold cards where it would be a delay with blue and red. Blue would be like a second long, red would be like half a second, and then gold would appear for a quarter of a second. And so mastery of that is what was really incredible. Granted, at the time that Twisted Fate had those changes going on, Misaya wasn't very well known, but by the time, I think it was around where Twisted Fate got his E rework is where Misaya really shined.
Okay. Well, when you describe it like this, it's making it sound like Twisted Fate was a lot harder to play. And yet, as you said before, it was almost like permabanned against him. And I remember later, in 2013, it used to be permabanned to everyone. In like Korea, you couldn't ever have Ambition or someone play it. So if was the champion... I mean, if they've reworked it, you'd think it must have been totally OP. But it's sounding like it's really hard to actually pull the gold cards there. So what was the balance of the champion like, do you think?
Well, I don't think the champion was very balanced because this is when globals didn't really have restrictions. So yeah, I mean, granted, it's an overpowered champion, and obviously, if you're going to want to win world tournaments, you're going to play overpowered champions. So I guess the only balance is that he, aside from his wildcard poke, his positioning's always been kind of an important factor. Where like there's a lot of long range mages, like even back in the day, like Orianna and whatnot, that didn't have to get too close to do the same kind of damage as him. So yeah, Twisted Fate. Probably a little too powerful up until recently, and even now he's finding a resurgence, but still can't really take away from the fact that he mastered it to the extent that he did.
So if someone's watched modern day Twisted Fate, so we saw a perfect example recently, which is Dade in OGN had this crazy game. If someone's seen how he plays there, and he was doing these great teleport ganks, gold carding straight onto someone, what was it like with the old global? What would Misaya be like? Was it similar to that? Could he really just pop up anywhere and just instantly kill someone, like just 0 to 100 them?
Well, not by himself, but yeah, I think he had the coordination with his team to do that. Like, obviously, his team played a big part in it, and China usually likes to run really heavy CC composition, so obviously you can chain CC in time, like the gold card to land like directly after another CC and follow up and get pretty much an insta-gib there, yeah. But if it had today's global properties, obviously a little more restricted because it's a little harder to ward against a TF that can pretty much, TP in from base to the opposite side of the map. But I'd still say that in modern day, if he kept playing, then yeah, he'd probably still be one of the best outside of maybe a couple of top Korean mids now.
Season 2 really was the era of the mid laners, not just from the meta, but if you look at it, almost every great team was like they had a star mid laner. It's just a fact almost in that period of time. And so, okay, Misaya, everyone will say he's so famous for his Twisted Fate, but what was he actually like on the spread of champions that we remember from the Season 2, the mages, these sorts of champions?
Well, to be honest, it's actually interesting because he mastered Twisted Fate to such a ridiculous extent, but he was by no means a one-trick pony. Like there was even a point where his Vladimir was pretty much permabanned against him, and he also played a very good Vlad against CLGEU at Worlds. World League ended up losing, but he still performed very well in the game despite being really far behind. So I mean, he's played Ryze, Deanna, Kennen. Vlad is, so he has a large repertoire, and he was a little shaky towards the end of Season 3 where he was about to retire, where he'd like pick strange things like Scion that didn't really work out all so much. But a lot of people that have these kind of like specializations, like, especially back in Season 2 when the talent pool wasn't quite as large as it is today, where you'd have like, Hotshot and you'd ban him out with just a Nidalee to Cho'Gath ban. Like if you ban out Twisted Fate, Misaya is still a very like volatile opponent. So
one of the famous things about the mid laners back then was nearly everyone, like the primary skill usually was farming. You had to be a farming monster if you were going to play Ambition, Alex Sich, Froggen. These guys are going to go ham on you in CS. Was he actually like a monster farmer in that sense as well?
I'd say he probably wasn't as solid of a farmer as like Froggen, because Froggen was kind of at the top of the world in terms of farming. But yeah, he was still pretty good in farming. But I mean, even rooting all the way back to Season 2, China was very aggressive in very team fight oriented. So yeah, he was pretty good, especially in China when, you know, the only opposition at the time really for a better mid laner or equal mid laner would be like ZZ Tai.
Sure.
So yeah, in comparison to who he's practiced against, definitely. And on a world stage, he's still pretty far up there. Yeah.
So whenever people talked about World Elite, they always mentioned Misaya and Weijia was like obvious stars. These are the star players.
Yeah.
And these at the time, in theory, in the meta, your AD carry and your mid laner ideally would be your stars anyway, you know.
Right.
But it always leads to like it's always going to be like a dilemma of which was like the real star, who was like the hardest carry of the two. Was it really a full 50-50 partnership? Was one good in one area, was one good in the other? How do you see the breakdown of World Elite? Because you know every AD carry fan's just going to say it was Wei Zhao carried him, you know.
Well, actually, the interesting thing about that is like you have to consider not just play, but the roles outside of that within the team. So Wei Zhao probably, just from a spectator's perspective and what he was able to do in the games, was a very, very strong player. Like obviously the best AD carry in the world at the time, I'd say. However, Misaya was very good, but he also wasn't just a mid laner. He was the shot caller. He was like the kind of like family coach of the team. He kept Wei Zhao and Cao Mei's ego in check. So he had all these different roles and still was a star mid laner, where even though Wei Zhao is still very good right now, he's currently the captain of the team and the current shot caller, and you can see that kind of affects his play a little bit. He's kind of, you know, I wouldn't say behind, but he's, you know, there's other AD carries that are probably a little bit stronger than him, like Uzi and Name and whatnot. Back in the day, Wei Zhao, unprecedented strongest AD carry in the game, but Misaya also was up there while doing the shot calling and the external roles.
So when you referenced before that they played CLG at the Season 2 Championship, there's a period in World Elite's history there that I think's like a bit cloudy, where people who didn't follow the roster moves that they did, all they remember, so they played CLG at Worlds and CLG beat them. But that makes sense, okay, because CLG had beaten them in the OGN tournament and they'd gone to this tournament in America. I think it was like an MLG or something, and they'd done quite badly. Actually, it might be an IPL face-off. They did badly at this tournament in America, okay. But what people don't know is it's after those two tournaments that they made the roster changes. They brought in the jungler and the support player who made the famous lineup we now remember. So then they played the first big tournament was the World Championship with that. And yes, they lose to a CLG EU, but if you remember those games, that might be the series where if you lose that series, you can be the most hard done by team ever, because you basically won like 2.75 games, but you lost the series because constant restarts and some of the games you're ahead, and then, you know, like it was kind of a weird series. Like it wasn't as one-sided as people might imagine if they think, oh, CLG beat them before, and I guess they always just had their number, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, yeah, the series was a little bit funny in the fact that it had those huge delays in the remake and stuff. Though I will say that it wasn't exactly like stompy either way for World Elite, even when they did win those two games. Like, they were still relatively close games. So, I mean, CLGU was still a very good team, and they had the whole stalling thing going for them. They were very good at keeping teams from closing out games, which works particularly well against aggressive teams like World Elite. But yeah, that's the funny thing, is World Elite performed so well on the world stage, despite the fact that this was actually a very fresh roster. Like, it was almost brand new. And, well, brand new in the sense that not all 5 members are replaced, but then they replaced 2 very crucial parts of their team. So yeah, you really got to see how strong the team's full potential was after Worlds, mostly. But they still performed quite well based on just how little time they had to prep with their new roster for Worlds.
Because the reason I kind of set the context up like that is because Worlds makes it look like, oh, they're still a good, you know, it looked like they were in a similar position. They're a good team, but they're not on the level of like a Korean team or the absolute best European teams. But then we see after that tournament is when they just went completely nuts, and they had this streak of like, didn't lose a game in like 33 series or something totally insane like that, including winning IPL. Yeah.
It was actually close to 50, yeah.
What was this team like at the time, and what role was Misaya playing within it? Was he still the same player he was before? Did he shine more in this newer lineup? What do you think?
I think he definitely shined a little bit more in the new lineup, especially because Clearlove had really strong synergy with him, who's now on EDG, but at the time, Clearlove was the jungler for World Elite, and that was the all-star lineup. And also FCZF worked really well with Wei Zhao. A lot of people didn't consider FCZF the best support because Sika and Name were a bottom lane a little bit following like Season 2, more into Season 3. But yeah, following for the whole 6-month period afterwards, it was basically them playing the same role. And also the fact that if anyone fell behind, there was another role to pick it up. Like Kame was very strong. Clearlove could carry from the jungle. Wei Zhao pretty much always performed dominantly. So yeah, Misaya pretty much just filled the void, did the shot calling, and just did his usual thing in the mid lane. And at the time, like, you know, Korea was still kind of in the dark around IP. Like after, well, they weren't so established as like, oh my god, these guys are amazingly stronger than every other region by a mile like they are now. So yeah, at the time, like any tournament that Misaya and World Elite participated in, they were just individually outplayed everybody. So
when you ask about when I say like before, everyone thinks of season 2 as like the meta of the mids, like all the monster mid laners that we remember around then. It's always hard to judge how did they do against each other, because there's a degree to which, since most of them played safe and farmed, it's almost like they didn't fight each other, they just both became monsters, then killed everyone on each other's team. How did Misaya actually match up if he went up against a Froggen or Expeke, or, you know, these people he did get to play? Like, who do you think had an edge on him? Who was he good against, do you think?
Well, based on what we've seen at Season 2 World Championships at the time, it looked like he was relatively even with Froggen. Froggen did out-farm him in 2 of the 3 of the games, but Misaya also put a little bit more pressure on. But at the same time, like you said, like Froggen pretty much just farmed up, you know, did the whole shove out mid lane, get wraiths, get purple wraiths, get blue wraiths, shove out mid lane, and he just became a monster for his team late. And I mean, that's just pretty much the full description of CLGD's playstyle. So, I mean, against like Ambition and like Misaya and maybe even Rabbit Star or like, you know, other strong mid laners at the time, I think he held up pretty well. His actual showcasing at Worlds was kind of more of a representation of how strong stalling in the late game was, because yeah, maybe he made all these early plays and maybe like, but at the same time, like it was just late game that really mattered. And I mean, so Froggen was so fucking farmed, you just get 5 items off farming. But I'd say like the funny thing for me is that I think if Misaya like kept playing and he played in like a season 4 meta like, at his like prime strength, then Jesus, he'd be so ridiculously good because of the amount of pressure he applies. And he doesn't have to worry so much about just like, you know, farming up rates and taking jungle camps and then pushing out mid again and just doing that like ad nauseum for 20 minutes.
So in the sort of meta where you roam and you go and you do ganks even as the mid lane, this is like the ideal time for him, right?
Yeah, for sure. I would love to see him in his prime in a time like this. And actually, I kind of have a sour feeling about people that kind of like, you know, retire and then are like, oh, I'm going to come back against all this fresh talent. But actually, he did say in an interview that he did want to return after a while. So
when you talk about the story of just World Elite, not even the individual players, people in general, whenever someone's a great team and they drop off, people always want to make it like, oh, the reason they were on top is because all their players were at their peak and they were all playing their absolute best, and then when they drop off, everyone must be playing worse. And so the storyline for both the Misaya and Wei Zhao is supposedly that when World Elite itself drops off, they're supposedly not as good, and then everyone's putting them down in the rankings as individual players. Did Misaya, as an actual individual player, fall off at the end of that World Elite drop?
I would say that he definitely burned out because, I mean, it was obvious going into Season 3 that he wasn't the king like he was in Season 2, essentially, of the mid lane and just like map pressure and stuff. But at the same time, he also stated in a couple of Chinese interviews that he was actually worried about how strong World Elite was and how they never lost. He's like, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do when we do lose. Like, it's going to be crushing because we're just not used to doing it. And it feels like we're not learning as much as other teams. So like, you know, while they're just winning and you know, sharpening their blades and their knives and stuff, these other teams are gathering the wisdom on how to defeat World Elite. And for a while, the whole meta in China was, let's play to beat World Elite. And eventually it worked. And all stars have to eventually drop down off their pedestal. And that's essentially what happened. Like, a team just focused on how to beat them and then expanded off of that. And then all of a sudden they had other teams that were equal or passing them up, but not for a very long time. Obviously, it was actually a full half a year where they had that dominant streak.
One of the problems with World Elite as a team when they were at their peak was that anyone who doesn't watch Chinese League of Legends only saw IPL 5, basically. They saw them, and everyone agrees, okay, they were awesome IPL 5, but the people who don't watch the Chinese scene either think like, well, maybe China wasn't that competitive and that's why they dominated, or they don't know how to judge like the accomplishment of being so undefeated. So taking it all into consideration, where does Misaya rank in the all-time greatest mids for you?
Oh. Do you mean if I put him like right now in the current day, or just like
No, throughout all of history?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, based on his impact over the course of the times that he was in his prime, I would put him probably like third or fourth, because
Who's that after?
probably Faker and who's the name of the mid laner from Nudge and White Shield? Because I think that guy is godly.
Goon?
Goon, yes. I really think that
He's second all time.
Okay. Maybe okay, it's hard to say because of like historical implications, but right now it just like the reason I fanboy over Google a little bit is just because like he has been ridiculously good, came out of nowhere, and he's like has a homing missile to Diddley Spears. But out of all time, let's see, it's hard to say because I'd still wouldn't put like Froggen ahead of Misaya either.
Oh, why?
Well, Froggen is insanely good. I will give him that, but I also have to credit Misaya and give him a bit more ranking points, so to speak, just because of the way he innovated with his play with the gold card, internal clocking, and the fact that he did these kind of like numerical calculations outside of the game and then implemented them into the game. Okay. Maybe I'm valuing that too high. I don't know, but
no, it's a subjective valuation. So fair enough.
To me, that feels like something that maybe people do that nowadays, most certainly. For other champions, but at the time that was just like unheard of because season 2 didn't have that kind of like macro strategy or like the outside the box thinking for their champions before they went into a game. So
I mean, I like actually giving like substantive answers, okay, when you're doing ranking things, because I hate the idea, and in League it's rife, which is like, oh, well, you shouldn't rank the best mid players, okay? There was like 8 great mid players in Season 2, and they're all equally good, just, don't rank them at all, because in every sport, we can all rank who we think's better than the others, we all think this point guard's better than this one. So from what you're saying here, you have a case that you would put Misaya ahead of, say, Alex Ich or Expeke or Toys. There's a reason to put him ahead, right?
Yes, Alex Ich, because he was very good, and like Toys also had like Bebe, and he had a very strong team backing him. So did World Elite, but maybe I'm not exactly evaluating it perfectly correctly, because I'm not just evaluating his mid lane strength. I'm evaluating the fact that he was like the mama bear of World Elite. He did all these calculations. He kept his team in check. He was basically that like team leader role that actually, Froggen and Alex Ich were as well. But at the same time, it's hard to determine where the leadership value lies based on the fact that Alex Ich only recently left Gambit and Froggen is, the leader of Alliance. So like if you take those two out, I'm sure that would also destroy the team. But just based on all the facts, or just based on all the stuff together, I'd bring Misaya above those two, yeah.
Okay, so
also because even though there's a lot of farming between Alex Ich and Froggen, I always felt that Misaya still applied a little bit more map pressure, but in terms of strategy, they got beaten out at Season 2 Worlds because people knew what was strong at the time, which was stalling and farming out and just winning the big team fights late.
So since you're, like the way you're describing his impact on the team itself, in that case, if we hypothetically could have got Z-Tai and put him in World Elite, or we could make Ambition speak Chinese and he's going to play in World Elite, it wouldn't be as good, or it couldn't be as good?
I don't think so. I mean, even right now, World Elite's new coach, Hero, is trying to recruit Korean players into the team, and I think it's a pretty bad idea because communication and also if the fan base is going to murder them for it. But yeah, I don't think you could just replace Misaya with anyone else. I mean, they did that with Sukim, who did really well against crappy teams in the first week of LPL this season, but it was very obvious that World Elite were hurting after he left. So, and even then, even when he left, Misaya was still coaching Weizhou and Kaomei for a little while. So,
if you had to pick one of his Twisted Fate games that either just stands out in your mind when you think of it, or is like a great example of what he could do on the champion? Is there one that comes to mind, a specific match you're thinking of?
Oh, I can't think of a specific match. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a disappointment, but I can't think of like one very specifically. I'd have to sit through the VODs.
Okay. Is there a tournament? Like if we go to IPL 5, will he be playing Twisted Fate there, you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Jesus, fucking camera.
Okay, is there a game he had on another champion that ever springs to? Is there like any famous games that you can think of now? Like say someone's never seen him and they want to just see the best, you know?
I think what people should look at, obviously everybody knew Twisted Fate was strong, so I think it's better to look at some of his other champions. I actually think people should rewatch the third game of CLGE versus World Elite in Season 2, just because you can see, like, okay, this was on Vladimir, and you can just see how strong he was, even though his whole team was behind. Like World Elite was getting crushed in the third game, which is very typical of Chinese teams to get streaky and emotionally upset and whatnot during the course of a long series, or in this case, just a best of 3. But yeah, he was playing so far behind, but still managed to get like an amazing score, keep up with Froggen in CS, which is an accomplishment in its own, and whatnot. So if I had to recommend a series, it would be that, despite the fact that I thought that was kind of disappointing in the first place. The fact that they had to remake the games, I thought the games themselves were still good.
Is there if you had to like be really concise, and so just give me either a sentence or like the first words that are coming to mind, what are the first associations you have for Misaya?
Passionate. I know that's kind of like a lame thing to say, but for how hard he worked, and the fact that even though he left World Elite, he could have gone on vacation or something, but he still played as coach, and the fact that he still wants to come back. Maybe stamina. Maybe stamina is a better word, because he still wants to come back against all these huge powerhouses that are currently existing in the mid lane, and the fact that he was able to consistently help win games for his team for like 6 months. Like, that's ridiculous. Almost no other streak compares, except for like SKTs. And like that's kind of ridiculous to have that kind of level of consistency with your team, I feel, and keep your team in check and their mentality in check.
When I referenced the Season 2 mid guys, even if some of them aren't as strong now, people will always think them at their peak, and that's how you kind of rank them in terms of historical value, okay? But is there a degree to which, if Misaya came back now and he got to play a best of 5 against Faker, and Faker just crushed him like he does almost everyone, is there a degree to which that had sort of like, would it at all diminish how you felt of him? Like, maybe he wasn't the best, or would it in any way cut at you like that?
I don't think so, just because I already value people like Faker ahead of Misaya. Simply because he's already left so much behind with his career. He's already had his legacy. So I can't really take away from that. Like, just based on I've never been a guy that really likes to rate things just on most recent results, even though a lot of the times they are relevant. It still doesn't take away from the fact that he did come up with that kind of like level of outside knowledge of the game and get that like total Twisted Fate mastering going down. So I don't think it would hurt my image. Like and especially because I already know that matchup would be a complete stomp in favor of Faker.
Is there a player, if someone had never seen Misaya play, I realize he's like a unique style of player, but if you had to give a reference point, so either another player who has a similar style, or if that's too difficult, maybe make like a pastiche of players, like he had the aggressiveness of this guy and the game sense of this guy. Like how would you describe in that sense?
If I had to compare him to another player that's relevant today, then I would just compare him to Hai, because Hai is kind of the same. And even when farm would favor him, he roams a lot and puts a lot of pressure on the map, and also is kind of like that core brain of the team. So for anybody that's not really familiar with Misaya for whatever reason, you can pretty much relate it to Hai, because I know most people watch North American LCS, so that should be something they can relate to.
Okay, so to wrap this up, do you have any final words on this topic, or somebody you want to thank or say hello to?
Well, I will say that I look forward to Misaya returning. I don't think it'll go very well. It usually doesn't when old talent tries to come into this fresh scene that's even more hyper competitive than it's ever been. Otherwise, not too much besides thank you for having me on this little snippet here. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.